Hello everyone, MP Hater here, and welcome to the first episode of my Elden Ring walkthrough. This video series has been a long time coming, as I was initially inspired to create my channel after watching infamous game journalist Jim Sterling crucify Elden Ring, the Soulsborne genre, and its fans in multiple videos. People like Jim Sterling are the reason these games have such an impenetrable reputation, and I created guides for Dark Souls Remastered and Sekiro Shadows Die Twice in hopes of combating that reputation. Elden Ring's highly anticipated expansion, Shadow of the Erdtree, is right around the corner, however, and in hopes of inspiring new Tarnished to dive into this world, I continue my quest to help people with the Soulsborne games. If you liked the video, please give me a like, subscribe, and comment. Otherwise, let's go ahead and get started. For first-time players, know that the heart and soul of the Soulsborne games are in how they create feelings of adversity and perseverance similar to climbing a mountain. Without the challenge of the climb, reaching the summit loses a lot of its meaning. Yes, you're going to die a lot in this game, but there's almost always going to be something to learn from your death. My goal with this walkthrough is to be thorough and to ease new players through the parts that often turn people away. In the lands between, we have a lot of choices. There are a few dozen combat styles, and most weapons can be wielded one-handed, two-handed, or dual-wielded. The starting classes offer early access to some popular archetypes, but you're free to equip any gear you find once you meet the stat requirements of it. I have a few suggestions, however, that will be easier options for newcomers. If you're into melee combat, then I'd go for either the Vagabond or the Samurai. The Vagabond is usually who I recommend for beginners. It starts with a long sword, a halberd, and a shield that can block 100% of physical damage. This allows a more defensive playstyle, and it gives you access to two very different weapons from the start. The Samurai's shield, on the other hand, only blocks a portion of physical damage, but they start with a longbow and an Uchigatana, which is probably the best starting weapon in the game. Each hit adds to a bleed meter, and once full, the afflicted enemy loses a huge chunk of health. So this build works really well for an aggressive playstyle. Magic, on the other hand, is split into sorceries and incantations, which require either a catalyst or a seal to cast. Most sorceries are long range and cheaper to cast, while most incantations are shorter range, stronger, and or focus on buffs. The Astrologer is going to start with a short sword, a staff, and they come with a couple of sorceries, Glintstone Arc and Glintstone Pebble. The Glintstone Arc in particular is extremely strong early on against multiple enemies. And then finally, the Confessor is this game's version of a paladin and will typically be tanky and combine incantations with dexterity-focused weapons. They start with a broadsword, a shield that blocks 100% physical damage, and the finger seal, which is actually one of the better seals in the game. The remaining classes offer veterans a more streamlined approach to certain builds, but they can be more difficult for newcomers. For the sake of the walkthrough, I'm going to actually pick the Wretch. It offers the hardest start, but it will be easier to show off a variety of builds once we gain the ability to respec. I also actually like the bonk stick they happen to start with. Starting at level 1, however, as you'll see here if you look at your attributes, be aware that the level 1 start does not make up for the loss of stats that the other classes begin with. So don't pick this class if you're planning on min-maxing, which basically means trying to get the most out of, say, a certain level cap. So as far as the other choices that you can make, everything else can be decided later in the game if you want to change things, with the exception of the Origin and the Keepsake. So not only will we be able to change up our character, we'll also be able to change up our stats later, but you are going to be stuck with whatever Origin and starting stats you begin with, and whatever Keepsake you grab. Now, all of these Keepsakes are items that you're going to find many of in the game. However, I would say that there are two that are standouts among the rest. The first standout would be the Golden Seed, and that's going to allow you to give yourself an extra heal either on your health or on your magic power, which is called focus points in this game, or FP for short. So I would probably recommend the Golden Seed. However, the Stone Sword Key is also a really good choice because these items can be hard to find, and they open up imp statues, which gain us access to some of the best gear in the game, as well as some of the hardest dungeons in the game. So that's a consideration to make as well. I'm going to go ahead and pick the Golden Seed for this, however. We will get enough of all of the items in this game to do everything. Otherwise, for now, I am going to leave my default appearance. I will probably change it later once I make some decisions about what kind of character I'm going to be building. And yes, you can change the name too later. Otherwise, we'll go ahead and start. So the story is interesting, but it is vague enough that it can be easily skipped if you're just looking for the gameplay in the game. I will say, though, if you're interested in investing in the story, a couple things to call out is if you head under the Start menu. I'm playing, by the way, on an Xbox controller on PC. I'm going to head under the Start menu and head to Inventory. And every inventory item that you pick up in the game has a item description that you can check with in this case, X. And that will give you details about the world as well as about the item itself. In addition, there is a lot of world building stuff that is environmental storytelling, so pay attention to the world around you. In addition, there's also NPCs in the game, so talk to all of them, which you should be doing anyway, but talk to all of them, pay attention to what they are saying, otherwise you can mostly skip their dialogue as well. Otherwise, though, let's go ahead and move forward. So over here we have an item. This is the Tarnished Wizened Finger. This is the first multiplayer item. So if we go check our inventory, this is used to write messages to other worlds. So on the ground, you'll notice that there are messages, and some of these are going to be obviously there to help you. Some will be there to troll you. So the community likes to do equal amounts of both. And then you'll also notice right here is a blood stain. In this game, you can basically check a blood stain and see how the person who left it died. So you'll see their final moments before they died. You won't see what killed them, though. So sometimes that can be helpful, other times it might not be. Otherwise, let's go ahead and head forward. Now this place is the Chapel of Anticipation. Right now, we don't really have anything we can do here, but whenever we come back here later, we can go around here and get into this door for a useful item. Otherwise, though, we just want to go ahead and head to our death, pretty much. So we're going to go fight an enemy that we are almost supposed to lose this fight, actually. In fact, most of the Dark Souls and Soulsborne games all start with some kind of early boss who's meant to wipe the floor with you. This one, I would say, is probably the hardest. I've not actually ever beaten this boss first thing, because you can't heal, and 2 hits will pretty much kill you. And he's got that, which will pretty much kill you. So, you're designed to die. And then you're going to basically fall to your death. And then you're going to rise again. You are undead. You don't die in this game. So even your own deaths in this game are part of the story. Anyway, when we reach our final destination here, we've got some flasks of Crimson Tears and Cerulean Tears. The red ones heal your health. The blue ones heal your focus points, which are basically how you cast magic. Behind us, we have an item that's going to be a while before we can get. So what I like to do is I like to get people into the menu early. And so I'm going to press select or back. We're going to head over to the menu, and I'm going to put a marker here. I like to use this one to mark the map. Later, we'll be able to fill out this map with actual pictures so we can see what the actual map itself looks like. But for now, we'll leave this behind because it's going to be a little while before we come back through here to collect that item. Otherwise, though, we're going to go ahead and drop in the pit in front of us. It actually will tell you, Cave of Knowledge, that you should go down here. So this is a great early game area that you can basically rerun over and over in order to see kind of the basics of the game. I would recommend doing this with a couple of the starting classes to see which one you like the best. Otherwise, I'm going to head over to the Site of Grace that we have here. Now, Site of Grace is eventually we'll be able to do a lot of different things. However, we start off with just a handful of things. First of all, when you rest at it, you will regain all of your health. It'll also respawn all of the enemies in the game as well. You can pass the time here, and there are some events as well as bosses that are only accessible at certain times of the day or night, so that is a consideration. Under flasks, we have the ability to either add a charge to a flask using a golden seed. So we've got one, so we'll go ahead and use it. We can also increase the amount of replenished by flask, but we'll have to collect sacred tears, which we are going to be collecting them periodically throughout the game. And then we can also allocate flask charges. And this is going to come into play because if you're a magic user, especially doing incantations, you're probably going to have the ability to heal yourself. So you may not think that having a lot of healing flasks are all that useful. Likewise, if you're an astrologer, you're going to end up being farther away from your enemies rather than right up front on them, and you're going to be doing long-range damage using magic. So it might be more beneficial to give yourself maybe one flask for health and and 4 flasks in this case for restoring your magic power. In my case, though, for now, I am going to be mostly focusing on a physical build and doing melee combat, especially since all I've got is the bonk stick. So I'm going to go ahead and stick with 5 of those. And then you also have the ability to memorize spells. So you start off with 2 slots. As we go through the game, there are areas that will access these towers that will gain us access to additional memory slots. So for now, you can memorize 2, but we're going to find hundreds of spells in this game. So just be aware of that. And then we can also sort the chest that we have. So we can sort our inventory, put stuff in the chest. In this game, if you pick up more items than you can carry, those items will end up being dumped in the chest, though what you can carry is actually almost unlimited. It's just that some items you can only carry a certain number of them at a time, and you'll put the rest of them in the chest as you pick them up in the game. So that makes it so it's a good idea to pick up anything that you see in the game, even if it's, something that you don't actively need right now. Otherwise, though, that's basically everything that we can do at one of these right now. So before we move on, I want to talk about the controls. A couple things. We can jump with A. We can roll with B. If we press B while we're moving, we'll roll. If we press it while we're standing still, we'll back away. If we hold it, we'll run. An important aspect about the rolls, by the way, is that part of the roll you are actually invulnerable for. So a roll is divided up into the invulnerable parts, which are your iframes or invincibility frames, and the rest of it is divided up into what's referred to as your recovery frames. So that's the rest of the roll that you can still be damaged within. Now, if we head over to my status right now, and we look at our equip load, the equip load that I have right now is 3.5 out of 48.2. And as we start increasing our stats, some of the stats we increase will affect our equip load. Right now we're in a light load. However, once we reach 30% of that equip load, we're going to transition to a medium load. And then when we get to 70%, you're going to transition to a heavy load. And those are going to affect your rolls. So if you have a heavy load, you're going to have what we commonly refer to as a fat roll. So with a fat roll, the number of frames that you are invulnerable for is going to be less, and the number of recovery frames is actually longer. So the animation for the roll is actually longer. So ideally, we do not want to be doing fat rolls. We want to have, at worst, a medium roll. And I want to call out, if you're playing as the Vagabond right now, make sure you unequip one of your weapons. So head over to your inventory. Head over to your equipment. Highlight one of the weapons. Again, you're going to have either a long sword and you're going to have a halberd. Play with each, see which one you like, and then highlight one of them and press X, because if you're playing as a Vagabond, you're already doing a fat roll. So beyond that, we can press X, and that will, of course, heal us. If we hold Y, then that'll bring up kind of the quick panel here, which allows us to put stuff into a pouch. So if I press Start, and I highlight the items on the right top for the pouch, I can basically equip things that I want to use commonly using the quick buttons. So I would basically hold Y, and then I would press, in this case, up if I wanted to use the item that I have assigned to that slot. In addition, I could also assign gestures to that slot. Gestures are ways that you can communicate with other players, and there are hundreds of gestures, I think, in the game that you can find that do various things. And again, these are usually going to be whenever you're communicating with other players, since most of the time it's going to be through gestures rather than talking. So as far as attacking, we've got R1, we've got R2. You can also hold R2, and that will do an even heavier attack. So if you want to two-hand your weapon, you can hold Y and then press R1, and that will allow you to two-hand the weapon. So some slightly different attacks. We also have an even heavier R2. Another important distinction is if we go look at our status right now, our armament, or right armament 1, is at 114 at the top right there. If I were to two-hand the weapon and check status, it's now at 121. So you're going to do more damage whenever you are two-handing a weapon, and this will become more important later when we get better weapons. But it also leaves you unable to block if you have a shield. You can block, however, with L1 using your weapon. However, shields are going to block better. They're also going to block more damage, as we'll see a little bit later. Another important call out about two-handing a weapon, by the way, is if you are playing a strength build, or if you have a weapon that you want to be able to equip that you don't have the strength requirement for, whenever you two-hand the weapon, it's going to do 1.5, or you're going to get 1.5 times your strength value. So right now, for example, I have attribute points, and my strength is 10. So while I'm two-handing, that's actually going to raise to 15. So if I have a weapon that requires 15 strength, I'm going to be able to wield it as long as I'm two-handing it. So that's a consideration, especially if you are a heavy weapon user. Beyond that, again, you can block with L1. Blocking, though, if you have a good shield, might block as much as 100% of physical damage. In my case, though, I am not going to be able to block 100% of physical damage. Anytime you're blocking with a weapon, it will be less effective than an actual shield. And finally, there's L2. This is going to use your weapon skill. Now, there are actually two different weapon skills that you can have. If you are two-handing your weapon, then you'll automatically use the weapon skill assigned to your weapon. If you are one-handing and you press L2, then you will use the ability that is assigned to your shield. So that's how you would switch between them. And in some cases, shields may have the ability for you to parry, for example, or they may just simply defer to whatever is your weapon's L2 option. So that's actually an ability as well. Later in the game, if we go take a look at our equipment, right now I've got Barbaric Roar. Later in the game, though, we'll get Ashes of War. We can basically use those to override whatever is the baked-in weapon skill that's equipped to our armaments. So either our shield or our weapons. And then finally, we can crouch with with basically pushing in the left stick. In addition, you've got, of course, the camera. Press in the camera button to cause it to basically go in the direction that you're facing. Otherwise, that's the controls. Let's go ahead and move on. So it is going to kind of talk you through the controls as we move along. I'm going to go ahead and just two-hand the weapon and work my way through this area. So it touches on the various types of jumping, shows us how we should basically dodge or dash. We've got some items here because we're going to be crafting items later. So we're going to head in here. So a couple of call-outs. This guy, if you get behind him, you can backstab him. That does a critical attack. Another thing that you can do is you can hit his shield. And if you hit his shield enough, you'll actually notice that the enemy will flinch first. And then if you hit him again, you'll knock the shield out from in front of him. So if you knock the shield out from in front of him, that will stance break him. And then you can get in front of him and do a critical attack right in front of him. We'll talk about another way to critical attack enemies here in a moment. Now, it looks like that enemy fell down. Well, that's okay. Sometimes he does that. Anyway. If you're not fast enough about killing this guy, he'll drop down and start attacking you. Otherwise, just come in through this path, kill him whenever you get up here. So this touches us, the weapon skill. For me, by the way, Barbaric Roar changes my attack pattern. So I get 3 very fast hits, all of which are very damaging and can break enemy posture easily. And I call it posture break, by the way, because I come from the Sekiro world, but in this game it's, I guess, stance break. So you can also get behind enemies quietly. And that I didn't correctly do that, but you can get behind enemies and do a critical hit with a back-turned enemy. There we go. So that's another way to do it. And then the final way to do it is going to be to jump into the air and come down with a R2. So here they're showing you how to do that. And when you hear that noise, you know their stance broken, and we can go ahead and do a critical attack on them that way too. So this is a Stake of Marika. Whenever you die in the game, you're going to respawn at the nearest site of grace. However, if there is a Stake of Marika near you, then you'll actually have the option to spawn at the nearest Stake of Marika instead. Sometimes that can be a good thing, sometimes that can be a bad thing. So consider where you have died previously in respect to the Stake of Marika, though in most cases the Stake of Marika will be the better option. Otherwise, though, we're going to be going into our first boss fight, which is a very easy boss. Now, this boss fight tries to teach you a specific combat feature, which is guard counters. So the way this is going to work, you want to block, and then right after you block, press R2. But you'll notice what just happened, which is actually the lesson I want you to learn from this. He had enough stamina to keep swinging at me after that initial attack. So I don't generally recommend doing that unless you know how many attacks he's about to hit you with. Every enemy in this game, just like all the Souls games, they have combos and they have patterns. That running attack, by the way, for example, would be an excellent attack to do a stance break against. However, his combos would not be, because he'll just simply keep hitting you with the combo. So consider what his attacks are going to be. Otherwise, we're going to go and stance break him. And I'm going to beat his teeth in. So again, to do that, you block, and then right after the enemy hits your block, press R2, and you'll basically respond with your own kind of swing back. But again, it can get you in trouble if the enemy is in the middle of a combo. Otherwise, we've made it up here. Go ahead and grab this. This is another gesture that you can perform. So we'll drop down here. So later in the game, we're going to find a lot of these trees that are going to have golden seeds in front of them. So this one doesn't, but you'll find them in the game a little bit later. For now, we're going to go ahead and leave. So if you ended up picking up these stone sword keys, this is actually the device to use them on. So this one requires 2 of them. And this leads actually to some really nice gear, but it's also a really difficult area to get into and get completed this early on. If you have some skill with the game, then by all means, you could definitely step into here. And it's one of the things that a lot of people will do right off the bat is go in there, because you get 2 stone sword keys whenever you get that item at the beginning of the game. But at the beginning of the game, for your first playthrough, I would not recommend going in here for quite a while. Otherwise, let's go over here. This is going to give us some additional multiplayer items that you're going to need. So we now have the Finger Severer, as well as the Tarnished Furrowed Finger. So if we go to the Start menu and head over to Multiplayer, the items that we have now are the Tarnished Furrowed Finger. So this allows you to leave a summon sign to begin co-op play. And basically, whenever you answer someone else's summon sign, you'll be teleported into their world. And you'll basically be playing with them. Whenever you are playing this game alone, you cannot be invaded, by the way. That is different from Dark Souls 3 as well as all the other previous games. So be aware of that. However, once you use this item and get someone to help you in the game, you do open yourself up to being invaded. So that is a consideration to make. You can also send the summoned player home. So if you've summoned a friend in and you're done, you can basically send them back home if you want to. Later, we'll gain some additional abilities to initiate invasions as well. But for now, those are the items that we've got. So we have now reached the end of the tutorial area. So basically, if you can see it, you can reach it. That level of freedom can be a little intimidating for a lot of people, though. So obviously, I'm going to give you what I would recommend your route be around here. But basically, we're going to want to first head over and grab this item. So this is a summoning pool. This is actually another way that you can do multiplayer. So if you utilize the small effigy item instead, then it'll basically send a cooperative summon sign to spawn to several summoning pools. And that basically makes it so that you don't have to worry about where are you relative to the summoning pad. Because if I leave a sign on the ground, then people are only going to see that sign right here. However, I can come over here and I can activate these, and once I activate them, if I end up using the golden effigy, then it'll basically put my summon sign here instead. So they will collect, basically, all the summon signs will collect here instead. Makes it a lot easier to find someone if you need help. Whereas if you are in just the general world and you're not near one of these things, for example, you can just simply do it like right before a boss door, for example, and summon someone in for help for that. So those make more sense if you're just trying to get help with the world in general. Otherwise, you can do it in front of boss doors if you want to do it for bosses. or in areas leading up to bosses, like dungeons, for example. So now that we've reached our first site of grace, we now have a path that's showing us a general direction we're supposed to go. So something I want to call out is that there are multiple regions in this game that we'll be traveling between. And all of the regions can be reached basically just walking to them, but depending on what region you're in, you'll find that the sites of grace will lead you to different places. And that's because each region has different, I guess you could say, goals that you're supposed to accomplish in each area. And so every area will have different goals, and each one of the places that you find, each one of the sites of grace will point you to one of those goals. So in this case, it's pointing us to that church in front of us, and then that one will point further north, which will then point further north towards that castle. Otherwise, though, we'll worry about that later. Come over here and talk to this guy. So in general, you want to talk to NPCs until they repeat themselves. Because we want to progress their stories, and quests often lead to rewards, so always a good thing to do. And then we're going to go ahead and head down here. So this is kind of our first lesson that I want to teach you. Because this guy's a boss, by the way, and he's obviously standing right in our way. We don't actually have to attack him or kill him now. So you see that I've just taken a whole bunch of my health in a single hit. This enemy is probably not something I should be facing this early. But that's the point. So now that I've died, we will have a marker on the ground over there, and our compass will actually point us in the direction of where we died. And that's going to be important because we can get back our souls that we dropped. Any souls that we are carrying, or runes. I'm a souls fan, obviously, so I often call them souls instead of runes. But any runes that we dropped will basically be dropped on the pad. And as long as we reach it and pick them up before we die again, we'll regain the runes that we were carrying with us. Now, to be clear, you don't lose stuff that you've already spent. So if I've already gotten, for example, my vigor up or my strength up, you don't lose any of that stuff. This isn't like a what they call a roguelike. We just will lose the 592 runes that I happen to have on me. So in this case, I'm just going to simply go around. I'm not going to worry about this enemy. However, I am going to go ahead and mark him on my map as a reminder to come back here later. Now, it's worth mentioning, by the way, it's a good idea to kill these guys. They drop build materials for making arrows. Not very good arrows, but arrows. So anytime they're in my way, I'm going to go ahead and attack them. So I've gone around, and we are safe. We're in front of the church. So we have a rune out here. So the golden rune that I just picked up is basically a collection of runes that if you die, you don't drop. Now, I recommend you hold on to these. Don't immediately spend them. Use them whenever you don't have enough runes to buy something that you want, such as a level. But don't use them all up at a time. We want to have some, for a rainy day if we need them. Otherwise, let's go ahead and rest at this. Now we can fast travel between sites of grace. And then we'll come talk to this guy. So go ahead and talk about him. I'll give you some recommendations, and we're actually going to take his recommendations.
You should buy a crafting essential. The kit costs but the import.
So we're going to purchase the crafting kit to start off with. Now, in general, the items that I would recommend picking up, telescope's not a bad idea for seeing stuff that's far away. We'll only ever need to pick it up once. Cracked pots are important because whenever we start crafting items such as explosives, whenever we throw the explosives at an enemy, we'll basically get a cracked pot back. So the cracked pots are used for putting explosives and other things in, and then once we use the item, we get the empty one back and we can craft more. So however many cracked pots you have is how many you're going to be able to hold. In this case, the maximum that you can hold on you at once is 20. So that's a consideration to make as well. For now, though, we don't have enough to buy more of them. We also want to buy the various cookbooks in the game, so these will enable us to basically craft more stuff. So there's cookbooks. There's also these notes. These are basically references to side quests and markers that we might want to go to on the map. I'm going to inevitably give you all of the locations that you need to go, so unless you just want to buy them for completionist's sake, I wouldn't worry about them. And then you might consider buying a torch. I'm going to go ahead and buy one. Though later we'll also be able to buy a lantern, so not as important, because a lantern we can actually put on our, like on our person, as opposed to having to carry one in our hand. But I'll go ahead and grab it for now. So definitely the crafting kit, cracked pots, telescopes, your cookbooks, and a torch. Would not be a bad idea for now. So over here we have a crafting item. So this is our first smithing stone. And anytime we're at a smithing table, we can strengthen our gear. Now in general, smithing stones are not super rare, but they are rare enough that I would not spend them all on a single weapon. That's not a weapon that you're likely to use. So play with all the weapons until you find which ones you generally like the most, and focus on leveling those up, but this allows us to make the weapon stronger. And I would generally, if you're ever in a situation where you're deciding between leveling your character or leveling a weapon, leveling the weapon is almost always going to be the better option, especially early in the game. So I would make sure that you are picky, especially early on, with where you use your smithing stones. For now, I'm actually going to be just collecting them. In fact, the next several episodes of this series are going to be us collecting early items, early gear, stuff that you would want out of the gate, regardless of which build you pick. So we're going to be making sure that we get various weapons that each of the build types would want to have early on in the game. And then you'll get to pick from those which ones you want to spend your smithing stones on. Later, we'll run into some vendors that we can buy these from, however, and eventually we'll be able to find them and farm them pretty easily too. Otherwise, though, we're going to go ahead and follow the path. Again, this is starting to send us further north. And you'll notice, by the way, on our map, this symbol right here. This is basically a map symbol, and we'll see it on the map whenever we start to get the fog of war moved out of the way. And we'll find several more of these. And these will basically help to actually pepper out the map with an actual map. Because right now, we don't have anything picture-wise on the map. So this will give us more details about the map. We want to basically get to here first. So that's going to be kind of our goal. Though there are some things along this road that we're going to be dealing with as well. Some enemies that we want to kill. We're also going to be accessing another site of grace as well. So for now, let's go ahead and head forward. Again, if you see any more of these, I will kill them if they're in my way. So another one right here. Yeah, nothing really special about these guys, just keep hitting them. They tend to be more irritating whenever they're in numbers. So you'll notice that there's a cave over here. We're not actually going to complete this area yet. But I am going to go ahead and get the grace so that we can teleport here later. It's worth mentioning, by the way, whenever you're in these caves, you cannot teleport away until you've completed this location. So we're going to come back here a little bit later to beat the stuff that's in here as well as a boss. Every time you find one of these, there's going to be bosses in each of these caves. Otherwise, let's head out, and we're going to keep going along this path, killing the enemies that we find. So you can see there's another one over there. So we got Kukri. Kukri are basically throwables, but they do scale, so that's pretty useful, especially for dex builds. Got another enemy over here. And we got another one over here. Now you might hear it in the background, the noise. If you hear that sound, one of these is nearby. So this is a teardrop scarab, and there are a few different types of these. So there are blue ones which give you back flasks for magic. There are red ones which give you back flasks for healing. And then there are also ones that aren't colored at all. The ones that aren't colored at all will generally drop Ashes of War. So we want to kill those, and then they don't respawn. So those ones are particularly important to go after. Otherwise, though, that basically cleans up this area. We're going to head towards here, and you'll notice there's a Stake of Marika here. So what we're going to be doing is we're going to be cleaning out this area. However, in case we die, which there's a possibility we could, I want to make sure that we get over to a Site of Grace first. And when you visit this Site of Grace, you're going to be approached by Melina.
Have you heard? They sir, but you. I can play turning to 80. You need to the foot.
So you want to make sure you say yes, otherwise you're not going to be able to level up.
I bequeath. Use it. It will summon torrent. Treat him with.
So now we have a new ability. We can level up.
I turn. Let my hand share them with me.
So a couple things to be aware of.
Your ambitions. The principles you would follow.
So we want to focus on stats that are going to affect our damage output or whatever weapons you decide to pick. So in this game, there are weapons that are going to scale off of strength, dexterity, intelligence, faith, and arcane. For example, if we go take a look at the weapon that I currently have, this weapon, you'll notice, says attribute scaling, and it says STR, which is strength, and we have C rank scaling. So that means that as I start putting levels into strength, this weapon will deal more damage. And some weapons are going to scale on strength, some on dexterity, some on intelligence, faith, or arcane, or all 5 of these. Most weapons, however, are going to scale on the top 4. Arcane is going to end up affecting bleed damage on weapons that have arcane scaling. So not the Uchi Katana, but there are a lot of other weapons that do bleed damage that you get a benefit out of for Arcane. Otherwise, though, you want to basically focus on the stats that are going to affect your damage output. However, before we ever really begin doing a focus on those 5 stats, we want to focus on a few others first. So, first is Vigor. So, Vigor is going to end up affecting your HP. So, if we increase this number, then your HP is going to go up. If we increase Mind, that's going to increase your focus points or magic, so you can cast spells more often. Endurance is going to affect your stamina and your max equip load, which is actually a change from Dark Souls 3. So it actually tackles this concept more like the original Dark Souls instead, where endurance actually affects both of these statuses, or stats. So stamina, of course, is going to be how many times you can do things like rolls before you get exhausted, how many hits you can take before you are stance broken, because you can also be stance broken in the game. It also affects your maximum equip load. So if you want to be able to equip your gear and not have fat rolls, then you're going to want to raise that. So the priorities that I would give you at this point is I would probably get Vigor up to 40. I would get Endurance as high as necessary to not be fat rolling. So I would probably start working on Vigor first. Then, as you start customizing your character, start working on Endurance. Now, don't worry so much about Endurance for any of the end game weapons. Worry about it for now, because we'll always be able to come back and stack more of it and do it later. And then for the other 5 stats, Strength, Dexterity, Intelligence, Faith, and Arcane, these should primarily focus on your starting gear, the things that you are planning to keep early game. And I'm going to walk you through over the next 3 or so episodes into getting some of the best starting gear that you can have in the game for each of the different classes. So you'll basically be able to pick which gear you want to use from quite a few choices. And you're basically just going to want to level these up to the point that you can equip them without having detrimental effects on your damage. So you want to make sure that you have the minimum requirements for Strength, Dex, Intelligence, Faith, and Arcane. And then, again, going back to Vigor to 40. So once we start hitting 40, we're going to end up getting into diminishing returns. So while we'll eventually probably get Vigor up to 60, Vigor is going to be something that, and really all of these stats are going to be things that they give diminishing returns once we reach a certain point. So that is definitely a call out to make. So again, for now, I'm going to be focusing on getting my Vigor up whenever I have the opportunity to. And then as I get equipment, I'm going to start leveling up my Endurance so I can equip that equipment without having a fat roll. And then as I start getting kind of these early gear items, I'm going to decide which of them to equip, and I'm going to work on the other 5 stats along with that as well. So that's going to be kind of the process. And then once we start getting more end game gear, you'll have the ability to kind of spec into these later too. Later, we're also going to have the ability to respec. So if you decide later, hey, I don't want to do this particular build, you can almost completely shift away from that and pick something totally different. Though it will be probably 6 or 7 hours before we hit the ability to respec our character. So I would pick something that you're going to be happy with for at least a little while. Otherwise, another thing that we've just gotten is the ability to call Torrent. So if we go to our pouch, I'm going to go ahead and equip the Spectral Steed Whistle. And this allows us to... Oh, that did not equip. There we go. So we can hold in Y and then press, in this case, right. And now we have Torrent, our steed. He's very mobile, which is unlike most horses in most games. He can double jump. So very important. If you press B, he'll start running. You don't have to hold B, by the way, to keep running. So just press it once. We'll talk more about this whenever we get to the Spirit Springs a little later. But for now, we're going to go ahead and get off, and we're going to clean up this area around us. Because there's a bunch of starting gear here that we're going to want. I would also like to try to get some armor, preferably a shield myself as well. I will say the drops from enemies are very low in this game, so if I don't happen to get gear quickly, I'm probably just going to leave it and then go buy gear from the nearest vendor. So we got Lord Sorn's Greatsword. Let's have a look at this real quick. So you can see that this requires 16 strength, but it also has both strength and dexterity scaling, and they're both at D ranking. So right now, this weapon is referred to as a quality weapon. A quality weapon is anytime we are referencing a weapon that has equal scaling for the stats that it has on strength and dex. So later we'll be able to gain the ability to change the kind of scaling ability it has. So we could push this to a strength or dexterity weapon if we wanted to. So we'll later get the ability to do that, just like you can with infusions of gems in Dark Souls 3. But for now, this is referred to as a quality weapon because, again, it's going to require... it's going to scale on strength and dexterity. But we don't yet have the strength requirements to wield it. And I'm not yet decided if I'm going to go strength or dexterity or quality or maybe something arcane. We'll decide that later. So for now, I'm going to continue kind of going around the outskirts before I make my way inside. So we got bolts. If we get a crossbow, we'll be able to use that. Obviously, if an enemy is carrying a shield, generally they're going to have the opportunity to drop a shield. But again, most enemies only have like a 2% drop rate, maybe a 5% drop rate, depending on the enemy. So come over here. We've got a flail. So this weapon is kind of the reverse situation of the Lord Sorn's Greatsword. This one is also a quality weapon, but it actually requires 18 dexterity to start anyway. However, it does blood loss buildup. So very similar to the Uchigatana, it's going to build up blood loss, and once it gets to a particular amount, it's going to inflict hemorrhage. And once that happens, the enemy is going to lose a huge chunk of their health. So very, very good if you are an aggressive fighter. Otherwise, I'm going to keep it circling this place. So this guy in the middle here, he's a little higher level than the other guys. We want to avoid him for now. Probably try to tackle him last. We got more bolts. Alright, so we got our first gear. We got a helm. Still waiting on a shield, though. Still no chest piece, arms, or legs. So we're going to go down here. So that stuff that I have around me, by the way, this basically will give me a higher drop rate for runes. Something that randomly happens in the world. And this is a whetstone knife. We now have the ability to use Ashes of War. So I can now equip Storm Stomp to the weapon or shield that I have. And again, that'll be the L2 ability that I have for my weapon or my shield. The bats, by the way, they come out at night. So if you don't want to deal with them, pass the time. Oh, he's looking at us. You gonna come over here? Guess not. There's an enemy right here. And he did decide to come after me. Look over the Stake of America. We're actually pretty close to where we died. Hey, we got another helm. Too bad we already have one. So we got a ruin fragment. This, by the way, is a crafting item. All right, so one of these guys that's walking over here, that guy right there, he actually has a horn on him, and if he blows the horn, he will alert all of the enemies in the camp. So I was planning on killing him after killing these guys off on the right-hand side, but I'm going to go ahead and kill him now. And this, by the way, is that map fragment that we marked. So we'll go ahead and grab it. And now that's going to populate out the map. So some markers on there we'll be able to better see now. So what I'm going to do now is I'm basically going to go through this area and clear it out a couple of times, see if I can get any additional drops. If I can't, then I'll go ahead and have us move on. Hey, we got a shield and we got some greaves. So right now this shield requires a strength requirement of 16. So we're not going to be as effective with this shield, but we can still wield it. It'll take a lot more stamina whenever we block with it. Another helm. So ideally I want to backstab this guy. Also still a couple enemies over there that I'll need to kill again. So this guy's probably a little higher level than you want to fight, but you can basically try to dodge his stuff, get in a hit here, a hit there, and eventually kill him if you want to do it that way. It's also worth mentioning, if you hit his shield, he will do a guard counter. So he, by the way, actually drops different armor than the other guys do. A little bit better armor. He's also got his shield that'll drop too. Again, some of these enemies, though, have really low drop rates, so I don't really recommend worrying, at least not right now, when it comes to trying to farm these enemies. But this does what I wanted us to see. So once you vanquish all the enemies in a group, you're going to regain at least some of the flasks that you have spent. So this allows you to keep going in the area without having to rest at a site of grace. In this case, we got a straight sword. So this is a very similar weapon to the great sword, except notice the difference. One has square off, which is a different type of weapon skill. The other one has stamp, upward cut. One has a strength requirement of 10, the other has a strength requirement of 16. So, a couple differences, especially in damage output for sure. But with that, we have knocked out the enemies we have here. We've also gotten ourselves a shield and some clothes. So I'm going to go ahead and rest at this site of grace over here, because we're about to head that way. However, we're going to do that in the next episode. So we're going to go ahead and break it here for now, I think. So in the next episode, we're going to be moving east. I'll also go ahead and use this opportunity to grab a couple level ups. Again, focusing on vigor for now. So we're going to be heading east to do a few things, get a few items in this area. We're also going to be coming back over to the Church of Ella in order to talk to Ronnie, which is an NPC who's going to give us the ability to do summons. Then we're going to access the beach a little bit, do a few things over there. We're also going to end up accessing this area here and start making some additional markings for different things that we're going to be doing over the next few hours of the game. So we're going to be marking a lot of points of interest on the map as we find them, as well as running across some additional bosses. But until then, thank you everybody for watching. Please like, subscribe, and comment. And as always, I'll see you in the next one. Later.